Take me away. I don't mind. You better promise me that you'll spread my word. Because I have a time ring. Hey guys, MasakoX here. One of the more unorthodox what-if series that we have here is that we're asking a question which doesn't seem all that obvious upon first glance. But then again, some of these questions that we have on the channel can be spawned from something so discreet and uneventful, but it could have major ramifications later on in the story. For a start, with this what-if scenario, it's now basically resulted in the Goku Black arc as we know it not happening. Why was that exactly? Well, the subject of today got distracted, and the initial encounter instilled a different reaction, which was a lot more constructive rather than edgy or emotionally charged. Taking a lot of cues from the game Sid Meier's is so known for, Zamasu today decided to not do anything wrong, in the traditional sense. I know it's a very hot topic inside the comments, and instead make mortal life all the more better in his own image. In short, if he doesn't like us so much, then why doesn't he do something about it? Which you could easily describe as being more wholesome. Those orange dinosaur-like creatures which infuriated our favourite rebellious Kai in training have now become the subject of his own investigations into how we, as mortals, can become greater than the sum of our parts. If only we were just given a lot more attention and proper guidance from his own vision, instead of him just moaning all the time. After all, he was training to take over Goasu potentially, so if he couldn't do the job right now, then when was he ever going to do it? Even though he could easily rig the odds in his own favour, he can make it really easy for himself, Zamasu's actually giving this a proper go, and with more trips to check in on, he is even gaining some mortal friends of all things. Who would have seen that coming when we first started this adventure? In the last part, Zamasu and his latest recruit Dec-Raph had started to ease tensions with the upcoming tussle between the two biggest factions from the barbarian society that was stemmed from the Green Kai's first couple of prophets from now centuries ago. But in the eyes of Zamasu, because he can travel through time, it was just a couple of weeks ago. Dec-Raph feels hard done by being just a puppet for his saviour, and instead demands that any further work requires some training up and enhancing of all of his already unique, amongst his peers, skills in ki control. Zamasu feels like he can finally settle this little inconvenience and prove his master right, that he is capable of improving any mortal people, starting with these literal barbarians. Unlike the Saiyan Goku, Dec-Raph is not a warrior. Given his physiology, had Dec-Raph gained the power of ki control, he might have easily blended into the background as just being a feeble being, only known for book smarts in a society where book smarts aren't exactly treasured. And although any barbarian out there can be certainly bigger and bulkier than, let's say, a human, he is still far behind from what Zamasu could expect from a barbarian, or what he wishes from him. In a normal situation, he would resort to time travel and buy some more time going backwards, but he's actually getting into the spirit of the challenge of a true master-pupil dynamic. He wants to do it right, but even he is starting to have his limits of resilience being tested, putting up with the struggling Dec-Raph. Dec-Raph, if you won't try well enough, I will be forced to disown you. This, after all, was your idea, the Green Kai proclaims in a manner that could be considered as haughty. The barbarian merely scoffs at this bluster, knowing Zamasu quite well at this stage. Remember, he is pretty sassy and perceptive as well. I am sorry, my lord. Being kept locked away in holding cells for the last few years doesn't exactly help with keeping your body in shape. Zamasu's patience wasn't entirely extinguished, as what his understudy lacked in physical strength, he got pretty creative with ki techniques. He made up for that. Once he'd gotten a bit better and had a better grip of those abilities, of course. At least Dec-Raph had something going for him. He could even mimic his own energy blade attack to some extent. Not as good as he, of course, but not too bad for a mortal. Zamasu was almost impressed. Or at least somewhere between being impressed and disgusted, and considering this a heinous act, the only thing keeping him from punishing his apprentice for learning that attack on his own is the fact that he needs Dec-Raph. The barbarians scraped together some kind of meaningful gains, and the army of the new prophet turned out to be quite successful. What also helped was that Dec-Raph was a far better diplomat than Zamasu could ever be, or could give him credit for. He was able to recruit the Carpenian leader, Emma, to their cause with little convincing, and not an ounce of physical threatening at all. Carnil, though, was furious to hear about this. He had been left out of the picture, forgotten throughout all of this. And this act was just yet another example of what he felt and was becoming a fruitless venture. After all, it had been told that this new united temple has the blessing of the Creator himself. So it was decided then. Carnil, in an act of impudence and desperation, decides to just deploy all of his troops at once, his entire army, against the land of Siberia. He thought that he had managed to give Dec-Raph the slip, but no, not even close. Zamas was watching the whole thing go down naturally from afar, up on high. But Emma's and Craig the Great's troops were able to overpower the ones of Carnil with little difficulty. The morale in his ranks had become pretty low, and the soldiers had gradually lost their will to fight. Not only that, but Dec-Raph was blasting their siege machines with some actually decent key attacks that would have looked not too shabby around the time of the Trunks saga of Z. Knowing that the jig was up, the losing ruler reacts. "I will destroy you, you unbelievers!" screeched Carnil angrily from the comfort of his sedan chair, situated on a hill overlooking the battlefield, but his threats were very empty, as the soldiers slowly just started to leave of their own accord, leave the field, leaving the shrieking Carnil vulnerable. I mean, things were so bad, even the carriers of the chair left him not too long afterwards. And before he was able to run away from the chair itself, leaving the chair completely unawares, he was confronted by Dec-Raph directly. Carnil was pretty old and decrepit, and was madly eyeing Dec-Raph with insanity in his eyes. How dare you! You are nothing! I am the voice of the Creator! No, Dec-Raph smiled, surrounding himself with a menacing key. I am. Carnil leapt up in a fit of blind fury and tried to impale Dec-Raph with a dagger through his chest, surprising actually the younger barbarian completely. Even though Dec-Raph was actually sort of wounded, Dec-Raph could still manage to blast the old creature away, but the dagger was starting to have an effect on his body after all. Dec-Raph was slowly starting to fade away. Zamasu was watching the whole time, choosing not to help his apprentice directly, admiring the irony of the situation in fact. On one hand, this would have been a fitting end, a conclusion for his latest prophet, and would make Dec-Raph somewhat of a martyr for his cause, something that he could potentially need going forward. On the other hand, though, this snarky creature had his uses still, and his people might still need his guidance for a little bit longer. Perhaps this wasn't the right time for him to slip away. Not just yet. And since Zamasu wasn't a Supreme Kai yet, that meant that he still possessed the powers of healing. I mean, oh well, what could possibly go wrong? Let's let the mortal live a little longer. Zamasu does decide to save the life of his prophet, much to Dec-Raph's astonishment. This time, he did not care if he was seen or not. This act of healing was a way of sending a message to any eavesdroppers. The Creator did exist. He removes the weapon and seals the wound. "You're welcome," he smirked. "Thank you, my lord," Dec-Raph exhaled loudly, not expecting the Creator to actually be assisting him. "You will have to take it from here, Dec-Raph. My time here is over. For now, at least. This may be the last time that we see each other, my friend." Dec-Raph gasps. Zamasu turns away. "I will be back in a couple of centuries to see if your people have messed up again or not. It is your job to try and prove me wrong, mortal." "So does this mean farewell?" "Indeed. It's been a good run." Yes. Yes, it has, my lord." Zamasu was actually feeling a little touched by this. This was probably the first time that the words, "my lord," hadn't been spoken sarcastically by his servant. Good. He learnt. He actually had a certain fondness to this one himself. So before he uses the time ring to go forward in time to see how the barbarians actually fare, he ascends into the air, making a short show for his people. He was sure that this will add even more credibility to Dec-Raph's time as his ultimate prophet. Make the job a little easier for him, it's the least he could do. It's his last gift. Thusly, using the time ring, he returns to the present day, feeling that his task had been completed, and what he saw was something wonderful. Dec-Raph had done it. He had done it. He knew, right here and now, that he had to show what he achieved to Master Goasu. He was right. To his surprise, he found his master in a meeting with the god of destruction for Universe 10, Rumshi. They were deciding which planets the latter should be destroying next. I would get rid of Barbari if I were you, my friend. When I was there last time, I hadn't seen them develop in any meaningful way. It is rather sad, but you can always plant life in a different place. Perhaps that world just wasn't fit for their destiny. Yes, it is sad. I took Zamasu there recently, but it turned out to be a bit of a pointless gesture. It wasn't a very enlightening trip for the young man. Oh, Zamasu, where have you been? Zamasu looks at them, trying to not let out any emotion or fear that cloud his response. Master, Lord Rumshi, pardon my interjection, but I think destroying Barbari would be a mistake. I think something has changed there since we last visited. Rumshi seems a little bit irritated by this questioning remark from an apprentice. What does your student mean, Goasu? Yes, what seems to be the issue, Zamas? Don't you remember what I said, Master? I said I'd fix Barbari myself. I want you two to come and see what I have managed. All right, I will entertain this escapade a while longer. Kusu, take us to Barbari. The little angel complies and takes the three deities straight to the world. What they encounter is a giant modern metropolis filled with lights and of species that has reached the brink of space travel, laced with beautiful temples and renewable energy sources. Goas and Rumshi are just left slack-jawed with astonishment. Kusu, what is this? I asked you to transport us to Barbari. This is clearly not the right place.
This is Barbari, Lord Rumshi.
Perhaps my old eyes are playing tricks with me. The Supreme Kai and the God of Destruction were indeed impressed, initially, but then Rumshi starts to notice the details down on the planet. He notices statues of Zamasu's likeness and a Barbari priest speaking to people down on the concourses below. He was dressed in an attire very reminiscent to what a Supreme Kai would be wearing, and had his face ritually painted with green and white hair. This was very suspicious indeed. What is the meaning of this, young Kai? The elephant god glaring at Zamasu. Zamas, what did you do? Don't tell me you flouted the ways of the Supreme Kai and actively interfered in these people's lives. I helped them achieve what they could not achieve on their own, Master. I did the work of a god. Look at them now. They are better than ever, making examples for many of our greatest worlds. I just gave them that little bit of extra encouragement, realized their full potential. You intervened, even though it is forbidden. It is not your job, child. Rumshi was angry. Do you think that we would not guide all these species if we were allowed to? If we could have massive problems here. Goasu, you shouldn't have let this happen. I don't know what to say. I won't destroy your pet project, young Kai. At least not yet. This will help our standing with Zeno, after all, it must be said. But one more action like this on my watch, and I will have to report you to the Grand Priest himself. And you could also forget about becoming the next Supreme Kai. Let's go, Kusu. With that, the God departs along with his angel. Zamas was fuming inside. How dare that pink buffoon dictate him what his duties are as a god? He glanced over to his master. Are you angry with me too? No, just disappointed. I guess this is my fault for not telling you how crucial it is for the mortals to develop on their own. But how are we supposed to be gods if we cannot intervene? Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to do nothing. Goasu turns away. Let's go home. The two of them go home without further discussion. But Zamasu took the first chance that he could to come back and behold his new world free from judgmental gazes. He didn't care what his superiors said. He was watching it from a safe distance now. He'll be a bit more careful. He knew that he was right though. If the Omni King wants higher mortal levels, this is the way to do it. So, what was that all about? He heard in an old raspy voice from behind. He almost jumps. He didn't expect anyone to be behind him. He turns around to see a cloaked, ancient barbarian looking at him, smiling. That elephant fellow was pretty angry with you, my lord. The purple eyes were looking at him, and the smile was very familiar. This can't be. It had been centuries. He should be gone by now. He was shocked. Oh, How are you still alive, Dec-Raph? And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? How is Dec-Raph still alive after all this time? What do you think he will do knowing that Zamasu isn't as superior as he made out to be? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later.